I'm Rob Scratch Mitchell. I'm a third-generation fighter pilot in the Royal Canadian Air Force, and I've flown a lot of the jets that are on this ramp. In my military time, I was a Snowbird pilot twice, once the leader of the Snowbirds, and I was also the F-18 demo pilot. So this ramp is really familiar to me right now, and it's like a homecoming. In my retirement now, which is kind of a silly term because I'm still flying a lot of jets and I'm not that old, is I'm flying a retired Royal Canadian Air Force T-33 jet. And this jet was built in the 50s and 60s and used all throughout the world, but Canada made a special version of them that was considered the best version of the T-33 with the biggest engine and made with Canadair. And this jet was used for pilot training for many, many years, and then later in the Royal Canadian Air Force, it was used as a combat support airplane, so flying against the fighter jets as targets and towing targets for the Navy. So it's kind of cool that I've retired and I'm flying a retired Royal Canadian Air Force jet. As you can see behind me, this one's painted up in United States Air Force colors because it was imported into the United States when it retired, and it was converted into what we call an FT-33, which is painted up in Korean War designation. So I have a great privilege to be able to fly this classic warbird at this show after having flown all these cool different jets.
Scratch Mitchell into the showbox in this incredible T33, also known as Acemaker.
This T-33 was primarily designed as a trainer airplane, so new jet pilots would come and learn to fly jets on this airplane. Now, in the early days in the Korean War, they had an FT-33 version, the F standing for fighter, so fighter trainer 33. And so if you notice on the nose of the airplane, there are actually some spots there, and used to be guns involved in this. So at one point, early on in the Korean War, these jets were armed and were considered fighter jets. They quickly were outdone by the F-86 and newer jets, and this became a training airplane. So now around the world, there are several of them flying, all in civilian roles at this point, in various configurations like this one for display and for movie work in Hollywood.
Cloverleaf, Ontario. Watch for a big cloverleaf right there at Show Center. During this performance today, you're going to see Scratch Mitchell fly the T-33 through its extreme parameters from slow speed flight all the way up to high speed flight. It takes a lot of muscle, a lot of coordination and energy management to perform the aerobatics you're going to see him do here today. At Show Center, this is a figure 8 line on its side. Enjoy.
Actually, there are 3 of these Acemaker Jets, and we fly them all over the country. Most often, these are flown as solo acts, so it's a single performance. But we actually have developed a 2-ship act where 2 of them go up and fly in formation, myself and the owner of the jets, Greg Collier. And so that's a lot of fun to be able to do formation, and then once in a while come and fly by myself and do it as a solo act.
133 entered service in the Royal Canadian Air Force as its primary training aircraft for fighter interceptors. Designation of the Silver Star in the Canadian Forces, of course, was the CT-133. The aircraft was a result of a 1951 contract to build T-33 Shooting Star trainers for the RCAF. Our plan is a RollsRoyce E10 turbojet, instead of the Allison J33 used by Lockheed in the production of the original T-33, is built under license by Canadair.
So you can see the panels open right now, and this is really all electronics. When the jets were converted in the late 90s and early 2000s to this upgraded version, they put all brand new avionics and electronics in here. In the Korean War days, this was all a big gun area, so there were actually guns in here and ammo compartments. But nowadays, they've just used all modern electronics, and they filled it up so that the jet can fly in modern airspace and be still an effective airplane. Even though it's a classic warbird, inside it's been upgraded.
Here's the very slow roll right there at Show Center. performed by Scratch Mitchell in Acemaker. Taking a good look at the top side of the airplane and that incredible paint scheme. Folks, 123 men, 23 engineers, and 105 shopmen worked 10 hours a day, 6 days a week to build the first XB-80. The head designer was none other than the famed Clarence L. Kelly Johnson.
When this jet was used as a trainer, and indeed I've taught people to fly fighter jets and on other airplanes, including trainer jets, it's a very difficult job because no matter how basic the airplane is, it's still a jet and it's going fast and a lot of things can happen very quickly, and so it's very challenging. And a lot of the reason people are coming to learn is they haven't flown jets yet, so there's a big learning curve to go from a propeller airplane to a jet, just surely by the speed and the weight and the mass of an airplane like this, because that's half the battle when you're learning to fly a jet, is being able to stay ahead of it. And so the faster you are flying, the harder it is to keep up with the airplane just mentally. And so that's the challenge that most people face when they're learning to fly a jet. Whether it's a classic jet like this or a modern jet trainer, it really separates those who have the skills and those who don't. And that's what you need in military jet training. This jet, like many jet trainers, was designed to be flown very easily because you want the students to learn. Jumping right into an F-16 or a modern fighter wouldn't be possible to go from a propeller airplane right into a fighter because you have to have that transition. So a jet like this is what was used for transitioning from regular flying training to fighter pilot flying training. So that's what this airplane is about. It's learning the speeds and the thinking process to fly a jet.
Maximum speed of the CT-133, 920 kilometers an hour, gives you a service ceiling of 14,000 meters. That works out to about 47,000 feet. Has a wingspan of just shy of 13 meters. Empty, it weighs just over 3,800 kilograms. That's 8,400 pounds. Is a series of rolls down the shoreline. This is almost maximum deflection on the stick as he rolls the T-33 around.
So you've raised a really interesting point about the comparison of learning to drive, and in professional driving outfits, often the driving instructor in the other seat has either a steering wheel or a brake pedal at very least. Well, it's not that different in this aircraft. The front seat is where the student sits almost entirely, and in the back seat, the pilot instructor has control. So if something goes wrong, the instructor pilot can take over, and it's a simple phrase we always use is "I have control," and then the student would let go and the instructor would save the day or perhaps just stop something becoming worse. That's half the battle, is figuring out when something's going a little bit wrong with the student, and then the instructor knows when to take over so it doesn't develop into something a little more tricky.
The T33, known as Acemaker.